John Roberts is clearly gifted mentally. He's intellectual. He's intellectually gifted. John Roberts is also an astute politician. John Roberts is smart enough to understand that the institution that he's trying to defend, the United States Supreme Court, is built on a deception, a fundamental deception. That fundamental deception is that there is an objective truth that should prevail regardless of your political commitments, your political leanings. So he's very careful. He's been very careful now to cultivate the idea that there's a right and a wrong in the law. And so people say, yeah, look at Roberts. He's very balanced. Sometimes he's with the liberals, sometimes he's with the conservatives. No. John Roberts is trying to preserve the legitimacy of the court. And you know what he's using to do it? And here's where what you raised is very important. You know what he's using to do it? He's using the ancestors, his ancestors. Because you can go back into the decisions of the Supreme Court and find an opinion that can support damn near anything you want to do. So when you read John Roberts' opinions that say to Trump, no one is above the law, and you have to release your tax returns under these circumstances, you read a little closer, and what it says is, now, however, if they don't meet the standard that I'm setting up, that's pretty arbitrary, but I went back and got a couple of ancestors to co-sign me on this, you don't have to release your tax returns. John Roberts did not say that Donald Trump has to release his tax returns. No, what John Roberts said is we're going to send it back to the court, to the lower court, to decide whether or not Congress has met the threshold standard that will enable them to get your tax returns. John Roberts is playing a word game, but what allows him to do it is institutional memory. When Black folks show up and say, I'm the first to talk about this, the people who know just chuckle at them, which is why when I see Black public, I'm calling them public intellectuals or, thought leaders, when they're out there in commercial media talking, and you see white people nodding their heads and looking very solemn, I'm listening to them footnoting every other sentence with all the other stuff that's been said previous generations, and I'm saying either those white people don't know or they do know and they clowning you, which means they clowning us. So yeah, institutions always have institutional memory. They might fight over a statue, they might not fight over a statue. When you make a musical like Hamilton, and you what you've declared is, I choose their ancestors over my own. And then they give you all the awards. How you gonna pick Alexander Hamilton over Brother Miranda? You're Puerto Rican, right? Okay. Arturo Schomburg, Puerto Rican too, yeah, right? Okay, did you go to the Schomburg instead of reading Ron Chernow's biography on Hamilton? Did you go to the Schomburg and look up what Black people were doing on that island of Hispaniola, on that island of Puerto Rico, on that island? Do you look at the slave rebellions? Do you look at how I know you know how Alexander Hamilton made his money in the Caribbean, so let's be very clear. Now, I know you know that, and you try to sneak a little bit of it in, and this is Ishmael Reed's critique of him in The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's saying, you only go so far by erasing your own memory and putting other people's memories in. But you're right. These people who say, I'm the first, I'm the newest, either don't know or are willfully ignorant. And they're allowed to do that because we don't get the momentum of what we've studied before. That's why Dr. Clarke, one of his favorite things he would always talk about, when he would give a lecture, because the last 10 years of his life, his eyesight had gotten so poor, he really couldn't see. And then by the last few years, he was blind. He couldn't see. And so Dr. Clarke would lay back and he would say, whatever the topic, he would say, we're going to put this into context, what he would call the latitude and the longitude. And then he would spread his hands like that. Trump is favorite doing that now. But he would rear back. He said, we're going to talk about the latitude and the longitude of this subject, a subject that was old before whoever's talking about it, before their grandparents were born. And then he would go back. And then by the time you get to the contemporary issue, he had shown where you thought that was new. That's not new. Here's the last time it happened. Here's the time before that. Here's 10 times before that. And so what should we learn this time? And then he goes 1, 2, and that's what shows you why scholarship is important. There are very few things that could be talked about. So you know, those last 10 years of his life.
Hold on, you asked the question about Hamilton.
Yes.
There is a mistaken notion, because this is what, you know, I interviewed a couple of people. Actually, I interviewed one of the guy that played James Madison, Oak. Yeah. And he said, you know, Hamilton might not have gotten done, right? This is the notion that they wouldn't fund a piece that would talk about Black people. but Marvel did a whole ass movie, Dr. Carr.
Come on now. Let me
about
see.
a whole ass fictional place called Wakanda that broke records.
Sure did.
Right? Tyler Perry has a whole ass island. The man became a billionaire.
How about that?
Plays directed towards just Black people.
That's it.
And Black places.
That's it.
When we talk about, you know, Shonda Rhimes and what she did in television.
Yes.
On that night, that Black woman.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like, you know, that's a cop-out and an excuse, and it's lazy. But that's how conditioned we are to believe that if we don't service them, then we can't, they won't fund it.
Well, Karen.
And maybe it's true. Maybe they won't fund it. But then maybe we should think differently about what does it mean to be funded.
Let me ask you, this is interesting. Well, first of all, you just taught the lesson. I hope y'all caught that. Maybe you should think differently about what it means to get funny. There's the lesson right there. And Brother Odom, I've never met him. He's from Philly. He actually Central High School. I know some of his people.
Odom Jr.?
Yep, Leslie Odom Jr. Yeah, I mean, clearly talented, brilliant. And of course, James Madison is probably of that group. He's the one that most fascinates me. Although, as I said, I've been trying to kill him, I hope. But, you know, it's interesting. Here's the institutional memory. On Broadway, the so-called Great White Way. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's only one theater on Broadway named for a Black person.
August Wilson Theater?
The August Wilson Theater, my friend. That's exactly right, sis. And you know what's ironic about that? In 1996, August Wilson gave a speech before the Theater Communications Group. It set fire to the theater world so bad that they ended up having a debate at Town Hall in New York. Man, ancestors are crazy. Wesley Snipes. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, I gotta tell. I'm gonna finish August Wilson in a second. Town Hall, the theater there in Manhattan, that's where they debuted John Henrik Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk. I think it was 1996. I came up from Philadelphia for the debut. That was the documentary on John Henrik Clarke, the life of John Henrik Clarke. And it's out there. People can watch it on YouTube. And Dr. Clarke walks through some of the stories that we've been talking about today. Because like I said, he would tell the same stories over and again to help people understand his life. That film was created, financed by an outfit called Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra was the production company started and funded by Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes was not at the debut because Wesley Snipes was shooting a film. Oh, it was Blade 3 or whenever. Anyway, parenthetically, we know when people talk about the first comic book movie to make any money was Superman. It was 1978, whatever, Christopher Reeve, whatever. DC was ahead. Wasn't no Marvel universe. Marvel went bankrupt almost. People to forget this. Marvel sold licenses to some of its superheroes to make money. The first Marvel movie to make any money was Blade. Wesley Snipes showed the Marvel universe how to make money. Blade was the first Black superhero, white superhero, first Marvel movie to make any. They had a little corny Captain America TV shows and stuff, and Marvel ain't never made no money, and they were going broke. In fact, Wesley Snipes then went out determined to make Black Panther. Because Marvel was selling licenses for these two. Oh yeah, we see, and you got to reach. You got to get Snipes on your show to talk about what that. Yes,
So do you think they hemmed him up with them taxes? All right, go ahead.
Yes, come on.
Dr. Carr, keep talking.
Snipes was this close to breaking the bank. The tax thing went left, and what was he taking the money to do? Fund St. Clair Born, the great Black filmmaker and documentarian, to make John Henrik Clarke A Great and Mighty Walk. He was going to make documentaries of all the Black scholars before they passed away. Oh. And I remember when they were making John Henrik Clarke A Great and Mighty Walk, because my jegnas, Anderson Thompson, Larry Obadeli Williams, Larry Crow, all these cats were going to Dr. Clarke's townhouse up in 137, helping prep him for the interviews. And Thompson was in the room when Wesley Snipes goes to Clarke's house, and they set up and they asking him the questions that Dr. Thompson had written for him. And I wasn't able to get up there for the thing because I would have been sitting there too. So I'm saying, this was Wesley Snipes' vision. I'm going to take this Hollywood stuff and we're going to get these resources and we're going to make our own documentaries. But here's the punchline of that Wesley Snipes story as I walk my way back to August Wilson, because Town Hall is what made me think of it. He couldn't come to the debut. So we sitting there, Dr. Clarke, Mama Sybil, everybody's there, family with. Who comes out on stage? Ralph Carter and Larry Fishburne. Ralph from Good Times, yes. New Yorker.
What was it? What was the Broadway play that he was in?
Oh,
my gosh, Ralph Carter was a little boy singing in a Broadway play before Good Times.
Oh no, not Arms Too Short to Box with God.
No. And there was a whole era of wonderful Black plays.
Yes, there were.
All right. We'll skip
No. We had to talk about that one. The Gospel at Colonus, Arms Too Short to Box with God. All them, that's Pearly Victorious. All them, that's right. In fact, what was that? Was it Buck White? What was that one Muhammad Ali was in where he played the slave who led people to emancipation? It was a Broadway. Yeah. Oh no. The Great White Hope, James Earl Jones. But that even it, the Gospel at Colonus. Anyway, yes, it'll come to one of us. Ralph Carter grew up going to the famous lecture series, and I went to it when I worked in New York the summer of 1989 when I clerked for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in part so I could get to New York and go to the Saturday sessions at 145th and Convent in a little church that's still there today called the First World Alliance. It was all over the country. People knew New York had the best Black study group because Dr. Ben was here, Dr. Clarke was here, Edward Scobie was here, Leonard Jeffries were here. They would fly in Asa Hilliard like every week. Sharcy McIntyre, the Francis Rogers Rose, all the people would come to First World, and on Saturday for several hours, standing room onlys, and you could be there with them. And Ralph Carter used to go to those. Ralph Carter drugged Fishburne. Ralph Carter drug Wesley Snipes. All them guys gave them books, all this kind of stuff. So when Snipes couldn't come to the debut of the film he funded, he asked Ralph Carter and Larry Fishburne, and they told the story from the stage. Listen, it's an honor for us to be here because John Henrik Clarke, his work and the work of these community scholars, that's what trained us. And when I saw that, I went back to when he was a little boy on Good Times talking all that Black stuff, and I realized this is not accidental.
You're right. So the play was Raisin, and then before that, the Me Nobody Knows when he was a 9-year-old little boy. But wow, so that little Michael was radical.
Was radical in part because of those street scholars that were getting the word in the community. So yeah, that was at Town Hall. But in 1996, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1996. Wow. Okay, that's crazy. Because I want to say that A Great and Mighty Walk came out in 96 in the summertime. This is around the same time. June 96, August Wilson gives this speech to this theater group. Then after that, they like, oh, you can't just say that. You got to have a debate. So now August Wilson has to debate the white theater critics in New York at the Town Hall. So to Leslie Odom's point that they won't let us make this, okay, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. Why don't you go back 25 years and get a little speech by August Wilson called The Ground on Which I Stand. You know what August Wilson said? August Wilson says in this speech that he gave, he said, let me tell y'all something. I'm one of the ones who y'all accept. I'm one of the ones who's one of the big names on Broadway. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you know what we need? We need Black theaters. and the regional theaters are dying, the local theaters are dying, y'all ain't putting no money on it. Let me tell you the ground on which I stand. He names all the ancestors. He go back to Africa. He started talking about, he said, yeah, I drew from Shakespeare and Sophocles, but I drew from the corner. I drew from Pittsburgh. I don't write my plays for white people or black people. I write out of my ground. And this is the ground on which I stand. And if you come to this ground, you find your humanity, but I'm not about to write a single word to satisfy you. And so they were like, you can't, right? And so Brother Odom need to understand, Brother Miranda need to understand. Listen, I know it was clever, it was genius, and y'all got great chops, y'all can sing, y'all can act, but do you know the damage you have done to another generation or two or three of Black children who are gonna look at you after decades of us trying to fight to get those images out of our head, and now they dreaming and singing, talking about, I'm not throwing away my shot, with some powdered wigs on and some buckled shoes, because you led us right back into that garbage. Come on, man.
And August Wilson, autodidact.
Oh, no question.
Went to the library to get his PhD, basically his GED.
Sure did.
Right? Because he dropped out of high school because of the racism.
That's right.
And learned, became a scholar. Man,
yeah, he did. And of course, April 27, born April 27, the great August Wilson.
What you saying? What you saying?
Well, I'm just saying, it's a pretty good day.
It was a great day. It was a
great day. So yeah, so John Clarke in summary.
Wait.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't let this go. I can't let this go right now. I've been conflicted because I've been watching Hamilton.
Sure.
On Disney, which we're going to talk about.
Yes.
We're going to talk about next.
Yes.
Disney Plus, of all things, is where Hamilton's debuted, and I'm like, well, I guess it's good that people get to see Black and folk, Latinx and Asians play these white people, and
yes,
you know, it's good acting and singing, and you get to learn some history about the foundings of this country and immigration and
yes,
duels and stuff. So you're messing me up. So I shouldn't have said. In context, we need to understand.
Yeah, in context. I wouldn't trash any of those cats. I mean, they're working actors, but let's be very clear. And I've never seen the play. I certainly wasn't going to pay for the play when it was at the Kennedy Center or anything like that. If somebody had offered me a ticket, I probably would have been 70-30 no.
Okay.
But I did purchase the soundtrack. It was on Apple Music. Not only the soundtrack, but what I think is the better project that came out of it, the Hamilton remix tape, where the Roots are on there and Nas and everybody else. And I thought, because that Hamilton remix tape gets closer to a critique of Hamilton. There's a whole song on there, because, you know, they had the song Immigrants, We Get the Job Done. Right. I'm not going to listen to Lafayette, because see, I lived in Philadelphia, so I know the history of them white immigrants, Kosciuszko, all them cats that came over here fighting in the so-called American Revolution. So I'm listening to Immigrants, We Get the Job Done, and I'm thinking about how you created whiteness out of all these white ethnics and went against the Native Americans and used us as the people to define your whiteness against. But on the Hamilton mixtape, what they do is they bring in Latinas, Latinx to talk about, these are the immigrants of today. So America going to have to be remixed. And I'm like, now, if you had done that, but of course you couldn't do that. So I get the logic of, if we can get our foot in the door and remix this, we can then use that as a wedge to open up this possibility of talking about a different America. So I get the vision, and the talent is clearly there. Here's the problem. You know how we know they failed? Because it was the biggest grossing play. And now Disney gonna make another $1 billion. If these people thought that was a threat, do you really think they would have made you the poster child? And then you turn around and now you the chimney sweep and Mary Poppins. They pulled you right back into this minstrel show.
Push back a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Black Panther.
Yes.
One of the largest group. So that also made a lot of money.
Yes.
There's gonna be a sequel.
Yes.
So are you saying that they didn't expect that? And that's why it's different?
You know, Black Panther, that's interesting, isn't it, Karen? I think Black Panther is a little different in this way. It's interesting about this Marvel Cinematic Universe. And like I said, we will talk about that at the point too. When Marvel got the formula right, and we know the film that launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Iron Man, right? Robert Downey Jr. It's 2008, I guess it was. Iron Man was not made with the next series of films unmapped. The only question is, how far out had they mapped it? Had they mapped it all the way out to Avengers Endgame? No, because they hadn't written the scripts yet. But had they done storyboarded, had they marked the arc out to figure out how they were going to resolve it? If it wasn't Iron Man, it was shortly thereafter. Because remember, in the first Avengers movie, you get Iron Man comes out, and I forget whether Captain America First Avenger is next. They got a couple of little pieces, but actually, of course they. What am I saying? Let me get my mind right. Marvel perfected the technique of the post-credit scene, the teaser.
Right.
Iron Man, I am Iron Man. Oh, now it's over. The credits, whatever, people are left. The post-credit scene, Samuel L. Jackson comes in and says, I want to get you involved in this Avengers initiative. Okay, so this is the strategy. You get Iron Man, you get Robert Downey, you got a bankable product, you got the box office smash, we made all the money. Now you got us hooked. And you got Samuel L. Jackson announcing, hey, them other comic book people y'all love, they coming next. And anybody who knows the Avengers, and then a bunch of people went out to find out Avengers, they say, okay, what are we looking for now? Well, we're looking for Captain America. Oh my God, we're looking for Black Widow. Aha! And then when the first Avengers movie came out a couple of years later, the post-credit scene, when Iron Man and them defeat the Chitauri, the monsters that come through the hole to attack New York City, the post-credit scene, who do you see sticking his hand in a yellow metal glove and say, I'll do it myself? Thanos. Meaning they had already planned out in what becomes Endgame half a decade before. How does this relate to Black Panther? Black Panther was going to be in the momentum. That movie could have been trash and it still would have made money because it's part of this 10-episode movie made for theater television show called the Marvel Phase, whatever you want to call it, story that begins with Iron Man and ends with Avengers Endgame. So they were going to make money either way, even if it was trash, because there are a couple of those films, Thor: The Dark World, for example, that's trash, but people made the money. What they weren't counting on, however, because they didn't plan this with Iron Man, they didn't plan this with the first Avengers, they didn't plan this with Captain America Civil War. What they weren't counting on was, okay, we're going to make a Black Panther. Who do we get to direct it? Hey, here's this young kid. Did y'all see this thing, Fruitvale Station? But this young boy out here at Oakland, he's got a different energy. You know what? We're gonna make this money. Let's let the black people, let's let them play and see what. So then, of course, here's where the talent comes in. Ryan Coogler, clearly gifted. He hood, brilliant, all the stuff mixed in together. He makes a pitch, whatever he says, he say, you know what, we'll roll with that. And he brings his boy with him. Because who plays Oscar Grant in Fruitvale Station? Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. Killmonger is a major figure in the comic books, but Coogler, with his genius, remixing this. So there is a genius element that's the X factor. They didn't know it was going to blow like that. And of course, the story attracts us because it's black as hell. And it's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which means now we're in the Marvel. So, okay. And they introduced Black Panther in Captain America Civil War, which some people argue is the best of the 10 movies. Because remember, now they're going to have a clash, superhero registration, and what's the post-credit scene in Civil War? Wakanda. Because remember, they're in the Civil War because the boy Zemo blows up T'Challa's father, T'Chaka. So they got this thing, it's cash register. But the X factor was this youthful, brilliant ensemble cast, Lupita Nyong'o, our girl from The Walking Dead, down in the garage. I mean, so all this is like, and then they got the young director with all the bomb soundtrack. And they say, oh shit. But then the X factor in the X factor was he makes Killmonger Black America. And when Black America sees Killmonger, they like, yeah, we like you, T'Challa and all that, but he right. We should get these weapons and F all these white people up. At which point Marvel is like, oh shit. Look, you got to undead him for Black Panther 2. You got to bring him back. We're going to make all the money. So I guess what I'm saying is ultimately, you know what I'm saying? Ultimately, all of this comes back to the idea that individuals can't be institutions. Meaning Marvel, whatever advance we got in terms of some cultural exposure and renewed interest in Africa, even though it's an imaginary Africa, Marvel multiplies that by a factor of exponential. Meaning what? And we got all y'all money, and y'all came back 5 times, and you brought everybody at your church, and you brought your mom and them who don't come to the movies. So we are more than happy. We have struck on a formula of success. The next Black Panther will probably be blacker than the first one because it's not going to change anything institutionally. Marvel is going to make all this money. And so
let's talk next time about what movie.
Yes.
Because now you're making me have a conflict.
We all do. We Black in America. That means conflict.
Okay. All right. We're gonna have that. Let me thank you. We went on a journey. Let me thank you.
Yes, we did.